The silent messageite was almost 3 in the morning when Leonardo DiCaprio sat alone in his dark living room. The soft hum of the city outside barely reaching his ears. The lights were off. The only glow came from a small candle flickering on the table. He hadn't meant to light it. It had just felt right. It's like maybe it would bring him peace. But peace was nowhere in sight tonight. His phone was on silent, face down beside him. He hadn't looked at it in hours. Couldn't. There were too many unread messages, too many unanswered calls. Everyone wanted something, a statement. Answer, a reaction. But all Leonardo had to give was silence. Hours earlier, something had happened. Something that tore right through the heart of the man who had spent decades in the spotlight. It wasn't a scandal or a rumor. No, it was real. Something deeply personal. Something the world didn't know. Something no headline could ever capture. His mother had passed away, and it wasn't peaceful. She had been sick for months, but Leonardo had tried to hide it from everyone, even from himself. He kept working, kept showing up at events, kept smiling for cameras, but inside he had been breaking. And now that she was gone, there was nothing left to hold him up. He thought about calling someone, maybe his manager, maybe a friend. But every name he considered just felt wrong. Everyone around him felt like part of the machine, part of the show. They meant well, but they wouldn't understand. Not really. And then, out of nowhere, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't loud. It was soft, almost hesitant. Like the person on the other side wasn't sure if they should be there. Leonardo froze. Who would come to his home at this hour? He walked slowly to the door, not expecting anything, not ready for anyone. But when he opened it, there he was. Keanu Reeves. No words, no smile, just quiet eyes and a tired face. Keanu didn't ask if he could come in. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms, and without a second thought, Leonardo stepped forward and let go. He fell into his friend's embrace, and for the first time that night he cried. Not quietly, not politely. He sobbed. Raw, broken, and unfiltered. Keanu held him like a brother. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," or "be strong." Didn't speak at all. He just stayed there, arms around Leonardo, letting him feel every ounce of the pain he had been trying to hide. After a few minutes, they sat down on the floor together, backs against the wall. The candle still flickered in the distance, casting a warm glow across the room. Finally, after what felt like an hour, Leonardo whispered, "How did you know?" Keanu looked at him with that calm, steady expression he always had. And then, softly he replied, "I didn't. I just had a feeling." That sentence hit Leonardo in a way no other words could have. They had known each other for years. But they were never the type to call every day or text often. Their friendship ran deeper than that. It was built on mutual respect, quiet understanding, the kind of bond that didn't need words to be real. Keanu had sensed something. He didn't ask. He didn't wait. He just showed up. "I couldn't sleep," Keanu continued. "I was thinking about you. Something told me to come." Leonardo shook his head in disbelief. "You came at 3 a.m. Keanu looked down and smiled gently. "There's never a wrong time to show up for someone you care about." Those words stayed in the air like music. They filled the cracks in Leonardo's heart. Not to fix them, but to remind him he wasn't alone. They sat in silence for a long while, just breathing, just being. No cameras, no lights, no masks. And in that moment, something inside Leonardo began to shift. He still hurt deeply, but now the pain wasn't his to carry alone. The weight of Memoryth morning light slowly crept into the room, painting soft golden lines across the floor. Leonardo hadn't moved from where he sat with Keanu. His back ached, his eyes burned, but his heart felt different, not healed. Not yet, but less heavy. Keanu had barely spoken since he arrived, but his silence wasn't empty. It was filled with comfort, with presence, with something real that Leonardo hadn't felt in a long time, being seen, not as a celebrity, not as an icon, but as a human being. "She always said I should slow down," Leonardo finally whispered, his voice low and tired. "She said the world would keep spinning even if I stopped for a while. Keanu nodded, looking down at his hands. She was right. Leonardo smiled weakly. I never listened. I thought I had time. I thought she'd always be there. Keanu looked at him carefully. That's what we all think, until we don't. There was no judgment in his voice, just truth. Simple and steady. Leonardo leaned his head back against the wall, closing his eyes. The candle had burned out. The night was gone. But the emptiness inside him remained. You ever lose someone and feel like the world should just stop? Leonardo asked. Like everything should go quiet because something sacred is missing. Keanu took a deep breath. Yes, when I lost her. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Leonardo turned his head slowly. You're talking about her, your fiancée? Keanu nodded once. I remember when it happened, Leonardo said quietly. I wanted to reach out. I just didn't know what to say. You didn't need to, Keanu replied. Some things go beyond words. They both sat still, surrounded by silence that didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of stories, of pain, love, of things they never got to say. Leonardo's hand reached for a small photo on the nearby table. It was a picture of him and his mother, taken years ago at a quiet beach in Italy. She was smiling, holding a shell in her hand. The wind had caught her hair and Leonardo was laughing beside her. Carefree, she always said that the ocean heals everything, he said, staring at the photo. She believed water carried our pain away. Keanu looked out the window. Let's go. Go, Leonardo asked, confused. To the ocean, Keanu said, standing up slowly. You need air. It's space. You need to let the water carry. Leonardo hesitated. His body felt weak. His mind wasn't ready. But something about Keanu's tone, it wasn't a suggestion. It was an invitation, and Leonardo trusted him. By noon, the two of them were driving down the Pacific Coast Highway. No assistants, no cameras, no scripts. Just the hum of the engine and the waves crashing beside them. Leonardo stared out the window. Watching the sea roll endlessly toward the shore, he didn't speak much. Neither did Keanu.
Oh.
The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was sacred. How did you survive it? Leonardo asked suddenly. How did you keep going after she died? At Keanu's eyes stayed on the road. He didn't rush his answer. I didn't, he said. Not at first. I stopped everything. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. People told me to be strong, but I wasn't. I was just there, breathing, waiting. Leonardo listened, heart pounding. But one day Keanu continued. I saw. This little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. She was holding her mom's hand, laughing so hard she could barely walk. And something hit me. What? Leonardo whispered. That life still holds joy. Even when we're broken. Even when we've lost everything, the world still gives us moments like that. And it's our job to notice them. Leonardo looked down at his hands. They were trembling. You think I'll ever feel joy again? He asked. Keanu didn't answer. Right away, instead, he pulled the car to a stop near a quiet cliffside beach. The sun was starting to dip toward the ocean, turning the sky into shades of gold and pink. Come find out, Keanu said, opening his door. They walked down to the sand slowly, the wind catching their jackets, the smell of salt filling the air. Leonardo felt the ground under his feet, cool and uneven, reminding him that he was alive. When they reached the edge of the water, Keanu stopped. He picked up a small stone, looked at it for a second, and then threw it into the waves. Your turn, he said. Leonardo looked around, found a flat stone, and held it in his palm. What do I say? He asked. Say what you need to let go of, Keanu replied. Leonardo looked at the stone, then at the waves. And with a voice so soft, it almost broke, he said, I'm sorry I wasn't there enough. And then he threw it. The stone vanished. Into the water, swallowed by the sea. He closed his eyes. For just a second, the grief didn't feel as sharp. It didn't disappear, but it softened. He opened his eyes and looked at Keanu. Thank you, Keanu, smiled gently. This The beginning. Leonardo nodded. And as the sky turned darker, something inside him began to heal. Footprints in the sands next morning. The beach was quiet. Only the sound of the waves filled the air. Seagulls cried softly in the distance. Keanu and Leonardo had slept in a small cottage nearby, simple, quiet, nothing fancy. It wasn't about comfort. It was about breathing. Leonardo stepped outside barefoot, his jacket wrapped tight around him. The air was cool and fresh, and the sand felt wet beneath his feet. The sun had just risen, casting a pale orange light over everything. He walked slowly toward the shore, trying to feel what his mother used to call the earth's whisper. Step he took left a mark behind him, soft footprints in the sand. Temporary. Like everything else in life, Keanu joined him moments later. He didn't say good morning. He didn't need to. Instead, he handed Leonardo a small, folded piece of paper. "What's this?" Leonardo asked. "Something I wrote years ago," Keanu said. "I wasn't ready to share it back then, but maybe now's the time." Leonardo opened the note and read the words quietly. "Grief is a slow river. You can't swim across it. Can only float until one day your feet touch something solid again." Leonardo stood still, his throat tight, eyes locked on the poem. "You wrote this?" he asked. Keanu nodded. Leonardo held the paper close, as if it were a piece of something sacred. "It's beautiful. It helped me survive," Keanu said. They walked side by side, not speaking much, letting the rhythm of the waves guide them. After a while, they reached a spot where the rocks jutted out into the water. The sea crashed louder here, wilder, and for the first time since his mother's death. Leonardo didn't feel like turning back. "There's something I need to tell." "You," he said quietly. Keanu turned toward him, listening. "My mom. She wasn't just a parent. She was my protector, my anchor. Every time things got messy in Hollywood, she was the one who kept me grounded. She reminded me of who I was." Before all this, Keanu said nothing, but his eyes softened. "After she passed, I found something in her drawer," Leonardo continued. "A letter, written to me. She never sent it, or she must have known her time was close." He reached into his jacket pocket and took out the letter. It was worn now, the corners curled. "Do you want to read it out loud?" Keanu asked gently. Leonardo nodded, his hands trembling slightly. He unfolded the paper and began to read. "My dear Leo, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. But don't cry for me. Celebrate me. Remember the way I laughed when I burned dinner? Remember the songs I used to hum when I cleaned? Remember that your soul is bigger than any award and your heart is stronger than any camera's flash. You've always chased perfection. But baby, you don't need to. Just be kind, be real, and never forget your worth was never in your fame, was always in your heart." Leonardo stopped. His voice cracked. Tears filled his eyes. Keanu reached over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "No words, just support." "I never read it aloud." "Before," Leonardo whispered. "It was time," Keanu said softly. They sat on a rock, watching the tide roll in. For a long time, they just breathed. No need to rush. No need to fix everything. Later that afternoon, they went into town, a small, quiet village nearby. No one recognized them at first. They weren't dressed like stars. It's just two men, carrying weight in their eyes and stories in their silence. They found a little cafe with wooden tables and the smell of fresh bread in the air. The waitress smiled as she handed them menus. "You boys look like you've seen the sea." Leonardo smiled. "We have." After lunch, they walked by a tiny bookstore. Keanu paused outside, staring at the window display. "Let's go in," he said. Inside. The place was filled with dust, old wooden shelves, and quiet corners perfect for hiding away from the world. Keanu picked up a poetry book. Leonardo wandered into the back and found a section labeled Healing. He pulled out a book without thinking and flipped it open. A single sentence on the page caught his eye. Healing doesn't ask for permission. It arrives slowly, quietly, like the tide returning to shore. He held the book close. Something about that line felt like his mother's voice. When they left the shop, the sun was setting again. Another day behind them, another step forward. Ever think about how many people smile at us, but never know what's really going on inside? Leonardo asked as they walked. All the time, Keanu said. That's why it matters how we treat them. We never know who's holding back tears. Leonardo nodded, his steps slower now. It's not from sadness, but from peace. They returned to the cottage. Leonardo sat on the porch. Watching the stars appear one by one, Keanu sat beside him. I don't know how to thank you, Leonardo said. You already did, Keanu replied. And for the first time in days, Leonardo felt something he thought he had lost forever: hope. The bench by the sea the following morning came quietly. No alarms, no rushing. It's the soft sound of waves and the scent of sea breeze slipping through the open windows. Leonardo sat alone on a wooden bench overlooking the shore. It had rained a little during the night, so the air smelled fresh, clean, and almost new. The bench was old, weathered by years of wind and salt. Carved into the wood were initials and dates from strangers who had once sat there, two people who had laughed, cried, hoped, or healed. Keanu had gone into town to grab coffee and a few things from the market. He had offered to stay, but Leonardo had smiled gently and said, I think I need a few minutes with the ocean. So now, here he was alone, but not lonely. He closed his eyes and listened, truly listened, to the gulls in the distance, the waves reaching the shore and pulling back again, to the wind carrying fragments of memory. For the first time, the silence felt gentle. He thought about his mother, about how she used to hum softly when folding clothes, how she always kept tissues in her purse, even when she didn't need them, how she kissed his forehead before every premiere and whispered, stay true. He had spent so many years trying to make her proud, and deep down, he knew he had. But he also knew something else: she had never needed the awards or the fame. She had only ever needed him to be whole. His thoughts were interrupted by the soft crunch of footsteps on the sand. He turned. Keanu was back, holding 2 paper cups and a small brown bag. Brought you the blueberry muffin, he said with a small smile. They only had one left. Leonardo grinned. Then you're officially my hero. They sat together, sipping coffee, as the sky slowly turned gold. You know, Keanu began, people always talk about grief like it's a storm, but storms pass. Grief doesn't. It changes, softens, but it stays. It becomes part of the landscape. Leonardo nodded slowly, like an old scar. It doesn't hurt the same way, but it never really fades. Keanu looked out at the sea. Exactly. They ate in silence, watching a group of kids chase each other along the shore, their laughter echoing through the breeze. You ever think about what happens after this? Leonardo asked suddenly. After we're gone? Keanu didn't answer right away. He sipped his coffee, then said, I think we leave pieces of ourselves behind, not in fame or films. In the way we make people feel, in the kindness we give, in the love we show when no one's watching. Leonardo smiled softly. She'd have liked that. She already knew it, Keanu replied. Later that day, they returned to the cottage to pack their things. The visit had done what it needed to do. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave Leonardo space to carry it differently as they loaded. The car, Keanu paused and pointed to the corner of the porch. Look. A small feather, white and delicate, lay gently on the step. Leonardo picked it up, holding it in his palm. She used to say feathers meant angels were near, he said quietly. Keanu gave a small nod. Then she's close. Ow. They left the cottage, slowly, driving once more along the Pacific coast. But this time, the road didn't feel so heavy. It felt like movement, like a quiet promise that things wouldn't always hurt this much. As the city lights returned and traffic buzzed around them, Leonardo glanced at his friend. You saved me, you know, he said softly. Keanu kept his eyes on the road. A dot. You saved yourself. I just showed up. Leonardo laughed gently. At 3 a.m., Keanu smiled. Some things are worth waking up for. That night, back in the city, Leonardo didn't turn off his phone. Oh, He answered messages. He returned calls. He spoke to friends. Not about projects or schedules. About life. About grief. About what really mattered. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Leonardo received an invitation to speak at a private event. Nothing impressive. I think it was a support group. Quiet circle of people who had recently lost loved ones. Someone had heard about his mother and someone else had told them about the beach trip. They asked if he'd be willing to share a few words. His first instinct was to say no, but then he thought about the bench, the feather, the letter. He thought about Keanu, and he said yes the evening of the event. Leonardo stood in a small room with no cameras, no spotlight, just folding chairs, soft music, and people with tired eyes and tender hearts. He shared his story. It's not like a star, but like a sun, like a man who had learned what grief really meant and what friendship could do in the darkest hour. When he finished, a woman across the room wiped her tears and whispered, "Thank you. I needed that more than I can say." And in that moment, Leonardo understood. His mother's love hadn't ended. It was still moving through him, through his voice, through the way he chose to live. When he stepped outside, the sky was clear. The stars were soft and quiet, and for the first time in a long time, Leonardo felt whole. The letter he never expected. 2 weeks had passed since the night Leonardo spoke at the grief circle. He had gone in thinking he was doing it for others. But afterward, he realized he had done it for himself too. Speaking the truth out loud had changed something inside him. He no longer felt like a man pretending to be okay. He felt like someone learning to be real again. Keanu had returned to his own quiet life. He never stayed long in the spotlight unless he had to, told Leonardo. Healing is not something we rush. It unfolds when we let it. And then he added with a smile, "But call me if the ocean starts talking to you." Leonardo had laughed. At that, not because it was funny, but because it was the first time in a while that laughter came naturally. Life started to move again. Slowly. Not with the rush of red carpets or flashing lights, but with smaller things. Daily walks. To his old neighborhood, cooking dinner for himself instead of ordering takeout. These moments reminded him of who he was before the world tried to define him. One afternoon, as he returned home from a quiet lunch, his housekeeper met him at the door with a small package. "This came for you," she said. No return address. Leonardo raised an eyebrow, took the package, and sat down in the living room, carefully opened it. Inside was a single leather-bound notebook and a short note written on plain white paper. He read the note first. "You once said the world should go quiet when something sacred is lost. Maybe the world can also speak when something sacred is found. This is for you. Not to read, but to remember." There was no name, no signature, just that he opened the notebook slowly. The first page was blank, so was the second. But on the third page, his heart nearly stopped. It was his mother's handwriting, dozens of pages filled with her words. It's written over many years, memories, thoughts, letters she never gave him, moments she had saved just in case she wouldn't. Have time later? He brought a hand to his mouth, stunned. She had written about his childhood, how he used to dance in the kitchen while she made pasta, how he cried the first time he lost a roll, how he once gave his favorite toy to a girl on the street because she looked sad. She had written about the pride she felt, not in the movies, not in the awards, but in his kindness. In his heart, every page felt like a piece of her had returned. One entry read, "I know he won't read this today, but one day when the world grows too heavy, I hope these words find him and remind him of the boy who once believed he could change the world by simply being good." Leonardo closed the notebook and wept quietly. Not the broken sobs of that first night, but soft, grateful tears. He didn't know who had sent it. Maybe she had planned it. Maybe someone she trusted carried out her final wish. Either way, it was a gift. One he would hold close for the rest of his life. That evening, he called Keanu. "You free tomorrow?" "Yes," Keanu replied. "For you?" "Always. I need to show you something," Leonardo said. They met the next day at a small hill overlooking the city. It was a quiet place, hidden, calm, away from noise. Leonardo brought the notebook and placed it gently between them on the bench. "She wrote these over the years?" he said softly. "Never told me. Just left them behind." Keanu opened the notebook, read a few lines, and nodded. "She knew. You'd need this one day." "I didn't even know I needed it," Leonardo replied. They sat there for a while, reading pieces aloud, laughing at a few stories, falling silent at others. "You know," Keanu said, "you've changed." "How so?" Leonardo asked. "You're softer now, more open. You're not carrying the whole world on your shoulders anymore." Leonardo smiled gently. "Maybe because I realized I don't have to. Maybe because someone reminded me at 3 a.m. that I wasn't alone?" Keanu chuckled. "I'll admit, that was a good entrance." "Legendary," Leonardo said with a grin. They sat until the sky began to darken. As they got up to leave, Keanu looked at him and said something that would stay with Leonardo forever. "Grief doesn't just take. Sometimes it gives back to us. Ways we never expect." Later that night, Leonardo couldn't sleep. Not because of sadness, but because his mind was racing with one thought. How many others out there were suffering in silence, with no Keanu to knock on their door? He got up, walked into his study, and opened his laptop. He began writing. Not a script, not a memoir, but a letter. An open letter to anyone grieving, anyone lost, anyone who had ever felt like they were drowning. He didn't try to sound wise. He didn't try to be poetic. He just told the truth, that healing isn't clean, that grief comes in waves, and that sometimes all it takes is someone showing up quietly without answers. At 3 a.m., he signed it, from someone who once forgot how to breathe but learned again, with the help of a friend. The light we leave behind, open letter Leonardo wrote that night, was never meant to be seen by the world. It was just something he needed to get out of his heart, something honest, something gentle. But after he finished it, he shared it with Keanu. They sat together on Leonardo's balcony, overlooking the city lights. The letter printed out on plain paper, folded twice. Keanu read it silently, nodding slowly. When he finished, he looked at Leonardo and said, "This could help people." "I'm not a writer," Leonardo replied. "I just wrote what I felt." "That's exactly why it matters," Keanu said. After some thought, they decided to publish it quietly, no press release, no interviews, no spotlight. They gave it to a small mental health organization. Leonardo supported in secret. The letter appeared one morning on their website under a simple title, "To the one who's grieving, I see you." Within days, the letter began to spread, not like gossip, not like a trending story, but like a whisper passed from one hurting soul to another. Thousands of people left comments, not knowing who had written it. They just knew it felt real, felt human, felt like someone out there understood. One message read, "I read this while sitting on the floor of my kitchen, crying. And somehow, I didn't feel alone anymore." Another said, "Whoever wrote this, thank you. I've been holding my pain in silence for months. Tonight, I finally told someone." Leonardo read these messages in quiet disbelief. "I didn't expect this," he said to Keanu. "That's the thing about honesty," Keanu replied. "It finds people who need it." Life didn't magically get easier after that. Grief still came in waves. Leonardo still missed his mother every day. But now, the sadness didn't pull him under. It became something he walked with. Something he honored. He started volunteering more, not in front of cameras, but quietly. He helped fund grief counseling for children who had lost parents. He visited support groups, sitting quietly in the back, listening more than speaking, and slowly, something beautiful began to grow, a movement not organized, not loud, just people showing up for each other, sharing stories, offering hugs, instead of advice. Being there when no one else was. They called it the 3 a.m. circle, inspired by the story. Someone had eventually leaked about Leonardo's grief, and the friend who showed up that night without warning, but Leonardo didn't fight it. He didn't try to hide from it. He embraced it, not as a celebrity, but as a man who had once needed someone to knock on his door in the middle of the night and who now wanted to do the same for others. One evening, Leonardo hosted a small gathering. In honor of his mother, it wasn't a fundraiser. It wasn't for publicity. It was just a gathering of friends, artists, writers, quiet souls who had learned to carry pain and kindness in the same hands. Keanu was there too. Standing beside him, holding a cup of tea like always, Leonardo raised a glass and spoke softly. My mother taught me that love doesn't vanish when someone dies. It just changes form. It becomes the way we speak, the way we show up, the way we care for others, becomes the light we leave behind. The room was still, and then slowly, people began to light candles. One by one, not in sadness, but in memory, in honor, in quiet joy. That night as the candles flickered, Keanu leaned toward Leonardo and whispered, "You know, she'd be proud of you." Leonardo smiled, eyes shining. "I hope so." Keanu looked at him with that familiar calm and said, "I know so." They stood there in the soft glow, to friends who had walked through grief and come out changed, not fixed, not perfect, but real. And as the night grew quiet and the stars appeared one by one above them, Leonardo knew that something had shifted. Forever, because now, whenever he saw someone hurting someone standing at the edge of silence, he wouldn't hesitate. He would show up, even if it was 3 a.m., especially if it was 3 a.m., because that's what love does.